China will focus on targeted poverty alleviation with the hopes of eliminating extreme poverty by the year 2020. That's according to a policy white paper released today.
For more on this, Associate Professor Alfred Wu from the Kuan School of Public Policy joins us. Professor Wu, firstly, the presidency has placed a great importance on sort of alleviating poverty, but he wasn't the first one to do this, but something he has been keen to push through under sort of his rule and his administration. Tell us about some of the strides or the progress that has been made.
He has set a very tight deadline. So basically next year, 2020, the poverty alleviation in China will be done. But he actually means that the absolute poverty. So basically he can do that, and also is a very big success of PRC.
Professor Wu, this target of poverty alleviation, we're looking at over 800 million people who have been lifted from poverty in China so far since 1978. So it's not just Xi Jinping's efforts, but cumulative efforts over the years. But as you say, this is a major push now. The country has achieved a lot, but are there other areas that it should be focusing on as well?
I think these is a very important areas he focused on. Previously, he focused on very much about anti-corruption. So basically, two attempts to try to appeal to the general public. So general public will be feeling very much good about China.
And how is he doing this about alleviating poverty? What sort of things is he putting into place?
I would say that this is a very top-down manner of anti-poverty in China. So basically, he sent millions of public officials to the countryside and try to help them lift out of poverty. But the problem is they do not actually target at the so-called capacity development among poor people.
And what do you mean by capacity development?
It means that they need to rely on themselves to develop some financial capacity in the future. Now, actually, Beijing pour a lot of money on this area. So it means that a lot of public officials go to the countryside, help the poor people directly. But eventually, poor people need to have themselves develop their own skills.
So as you mentioned earlier, this target of 2020, it is an ambitious target to eliminate poverty by this year. But you mentioned before this issue of poverty in the countryside. The big infrastructure projects, the push for development, perhaps hasn't reached some of the people who live furthest out in the countryside. What are the main challenges to actually alleviating poverty to the extent that Xi Jinping perhaps would want? I mean, we could also look at it from the point of construction or businesses moving out to the countryside. That might help as well in terms of alleviating poverty, jobs and so on.
Yeah, true. There is some kind of argument. Some people argue that we need to move rural people out of rural areas. So basically, they will move to the urban areas. Then you will have better lives. But in terms of culture issues, then it will be another issue. So the poverty issue is closely related to many issues, not only about the kind of financial situation of the family.
It really comes down to sort of job opportunities as well. And so are there any steps to sort of help industries move to areas to take advantage of people out there, an able workforce?
Usually it's a very tough job for asking industry to move to the rural areas. It's not easy. So basically we need to strike a balance between poverty reduction and also culture issues.
Do you think there are other kinds of policy measures that perhaps the authorities could focus on towards this end of eliminating poverty?
I think in the next step, the Chinese government need to really focus on how to make especially poor people live a better life by themselves. Then developing some kind of new schemes, and also try to have more a close relationship between poor people and also public officials who try to help them.
So what I hear you say is that perhaps the authorities would want to push for people in the countryside perhaps to have more self-sufficiency. But how could they do that? How could they what kind of support would they need to actually build upon?
What's the difference between China's approach and also the rest of the world, particularly like Indian approach, is China really rely on government resources, but other countries really rely on NGOs. NGOs can go to the rural areas, then they can help them to develop their own schemes. So that's the part China really need to help that in the future.
Well, US and China trade war taking its toll on the economy, does that also then have a knock-on effect to the ability for China to help people? I mean, if the economy starts slowing down, then there's less work for everybody, less money in the system. That obviously can't help trying to get people out of poverty.
I think to some extent the US-China trade war has a negative impact on the economy, but on the other hand, the US-China trade war also provides an opportunity for local people, local business to develop. So if they can utilize this kind of opportunity, then local poor people can benefit from that.
Professor, thank you very much for coming into the studios to share your thoughts with us on the alleviation of poverty in China and during this 70th anniversary year. We've been speaking there to Associate Professor Alfred Wu from the Kuan School of Public Policy.